The universe, in all its infinite complexity and incomprehensible scale, remained utterly united on one singular truth. Stupidity was not only universal, it was aggressively contagious. And nowhere was that more apparent than on the 27th floor of the Galactic Cooperative's Welcome Pavilion on the planet Dreknor 9, where the well-intentioned, mucus-glistening Ambassador Glorth of the Crack's hegemony leaned forward, tentacles trembling with joy, and ceremonially sneezed on a human toddler. Now, to be fair, in Craxian tradition, coating someone's forehead in sacred bioluminescent nasal secretions was the highest form of blessing, an ancient rite of respect, usually reserved for war heroes, planetary monarchs, and that one time, a pineapple. Unfortunately for Ambassador Glorth, the human child in question was Ellie Monroe, age 4, whose mother was not only present but had recently retired from the U.S. Navy SEALs with honors, a titanium hip, and a very short temper. Commander Julia Monroe did not shout. She did not threaten. She did not even move. She merely blinked once, turned slowly to the closest galactic interpreter drone, and said, in a tone that made the drone develop emotional instability, "I'm going to need the exact location of your strategic command node, please." Within 37 minutes, Earth had declared war on the Crack's hegemony. Within 38 minutes, the rest of the Galo Cooperative was dragged in, mostly because the Council's conflict resolution system had the response time of an arthritic glacier. By the time Galo's emergency session was scheduled, 5 days later, humanity had already launched 13 precision strike fleets, decapitated the Craxian Orbital Command Center using nothing but a sonic logic virus embedded in a nursery rhyme, and deployed a psychological operations unit composed entirely of exhausted kindergarten teachers and one very aggressive children's author. The galactic reaction ranged from diplomatic gasps to emergency meditation retreats. No one had realized that Earth, the galactic equivalent of a kindergartner at a PhD seminar, had been preparing for war since first contact, not because they wanted it, but because someone, somewhere, was always going to try something stupid. And Earth, bless its anxious, trigger-disciplined heart, had spreadsheets for that. The declaration of war was wrapped in polite diplomatic formatting, delivered in triplicate, and printed on recycled paper. The message itself was calm, firm, and terrifyingly precise. Boundary violation confirmed. Demonstration commencing. This is not a war, it is an education. The footage of the incident, now viral on 73 galactic data channels, showed the sacred sneeze hitting Ellie's forehead like a comet. Her only response had been a blink and a mildly offended "you." Her mother's expression, however, had frozen into a polite mask that most Earth psychologists later identified as the final facial posture before nuclear retaliation. On the council floor, debate sputtered like a dying exhaust fan. Many species argued that the act had been an innocent cultural gift. Others pointed out that humanity's response had not included a single civilian casualty. Strategic hubs had been neutralized, supply chains isolated, and dozens of command centers turned into precision-cut sculpture gardens. No blood, just messages. We saw. We noticed. Don't do that again. For the first time in recorded history, Galo's collective civilizations realized they'd made a category error of galactic proportions. They hadn't welcomed a naive species. They'd poked a sleeping apex predator who just wanted to be left alone to raise its young in peace. And now the predator was stretching, sipping coffee, and asking which part of your civilization you'd like back unbroken. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ellie was happily drawing a stick figure labeled Mr. Tentacle, with big googly eyes and what appeared to be exploding space pancakes. The galaxy had yet to understand it wasn't just a mother they'd offended. It was an entire civilization built on bedtime stories that always ended with, "And then Mommy blew up the asteroid." And that was just the beginning. By the time the Galactic Cooperative finally convened their Emergency Understanding Symposium, hosted in a dome-shaped parliamentary hall that smelled like burnt citrus and misplaced confidence, the war was technically over. That is, if you defined war as the unidirectional, hyper-coordinated, non-lethal dismantling of every crack's hegemony military installation from orbit, carried out with surgical precision, zero casualties, and an eerie soundtrack of human lullabies broadcast across enemy frequencies. The assembled council of species, robed in ceremonial fabrics, draped in ancestral slime, and burdened by centuries of uninterrupted smugness, struggled to reconcile what had happened. To them, Earth had always been an amusing novelty, primitive but enthusiastic, a species best observed from a safe distance like a flaming toddler juggling chainsaws. Their envoy reports had consistently described humans as emotionally erratic, technologically inconsistent, and pathologically obsessed with caffeine. But what the Galo Council had failed to grasp, what no one in the room was prepared to admit, was that Earth had never been erratic. It had been hiding, biding, smiling, politely while memorizing everyone's weaknesses like a nervous dinner guest who could kill you with a salad fork. The strategic director of Earth's Unified Defense Command, Admiral Sarah Vaughn, appeared via hologram at the center of the chamber, sipping tea with the slow, calculated casualness of a woman who'd personally approved the orbital erasure of a planetary fleet while wearing fuzzy socks. Her tone was pleasant, her smile gentle, her eyes entirely devoid of forgiveness. "We're not angry," she explained, as the holographic display behind her casually rotated through an animated chart titled Galactic Diplomatic Faux Pas, a children's guide to consequences. Just disappointed and demonstrating proportional boundaries. A Craxian delegate attempted to object, flailing two tentacles in what may have been either a gesture of protest or a stress-induced seizure. "It was a blessing," he wailed. "A sacred mucus, the highest honor our species can bestow." Admiral Vaughn didn't blink. "We don't accept spit on our children, sacred or otherwise. Cultural context is not a free pass for boundary. Violation." The word boundary echoed through the chamber like a plasma charge. At that moment, reports began flooding into the Galo Council's comms network. Earth's fleets, previously assumed to consist of quaint kinetic relics and retrofitted mining barges, had unveiled something else entirely. Vessels that didn't glow or purr like elegant alien cruisers, but creaked, rumbled, and rained low-orbit judgment like disgruntled deities with precision orbital strikes disguised as educational materials. One Craxonian station had been converted into a planetary museum titled How Not to Meet a Human Child, complete with interactive exhibits, smell-enhanced trauma simulators, and a gift shop. It had already sold out of plush dolls shaped like Ellie holding a tactical nuke. Meanwhile, internal Galo intelligence logs revealed a chilling reality. Earth had spent the last 7 years methodically decoding every known species' language, tech specs, emotional response ranges, and allergic triggers. What the galaxy mistook as human clumsiness had been calculated performance art, meant to lull civilizations into underestimating a species that weaponized guilt, silence, and passive-aggressive smiles. Entire council civilizations had fallen for it. Worse, some had invited it in for tea. Behind the politeness, Earth had built the single most asymmetrically terrifying military doctrine in galactic history: strategic containment via educated disrespect. It wasn't war. It was a performance. A masterclass in threat psychology delivered with cheerful tone and terrifying restraint. And now, as panic spread through the council like a bad software update, whispers began. Whispers that Earth's restraint had been a warning, not a limit. That the absence of mass casualties was not a flaw in capability, but an intentional message. You exist because we allow it. Across the chamber, a Galo delegate from the amphibious Forbloon species stood and croaked. "So, what are their demands?" Vaughn's smile widened slightly. "Just one, an apology. Delivered to the child. Personally, publicly, sincerely." The room went silent, even the auto-breathing delegates holding still. No resources, no territory. No vengeance, just respect, a boundary marked in mucus, bloodlessly avenged by bedtime stories and surgical dread. And somewhere, on a quiet farm on Earth, a 4-year-old girl giggled as she fed her pet goat a cookie, blissfully unaware that she had just become the most diplomatically significant life form in the galaxy. The apology ceremony was scheduled with the kind of reverent panic usually reserved for peace treaties and emergency galactic evacuations, but before a single ambassador could rehearse their tone or perfect their bow depth, Earth did something far more terrifying than launching another fleet. They waited. No retaliation, no press releases, no viral meme drops from Earth's infamously sarcastic Department of Interstellar Affairs. Not even a passive-aggressive infographic about how, not to sneeze on toddlers, just silence. The kind of silence that made admirals sweat through their ceremonial fur, the kind that turned confident warlords into paranoid poets. Galo's bureaucrats, long used to wrapping any incident in 17 layers of paperwork and hoping it aged into irrelevance, now found themselves confronted by a new kind of warfare. Strategic absence. Earth's fleets loomed in system after system, hovering at the exact distance where they were neither attacking nor violating space. Treaties, but close enough that you could read the weapon bay inscriptions. Each one bore simple human messages like, "Please try again. This is a warning, not a wish," or the particularly unnerving, "Do you know where your command codes are?" It wasn't a war, it was a stage play, and humanity had written themselves as the quiet, looming antagonist in a theater full of smug diplomats, suddenly forgetting their lines. On the galactic net, Earth's tactical restraint was dissected in terrified fascination. Alien analysts attempted to decode human strategy through species psychology, only to discover half their data was fabricated. The other half? Disturbingly, accurate predictions that Earth had quietly inserted into galactic simulation networks years earlier under the guise of children's educational entertainment. One such program, Ellie's Big Interstellar Boundary Adventure, had unknowingly trained an entire generation of Galo youth on how to avoid cultural violations, complete with animated mucus monsters and a sing-along segment titled, "No Means Don't Invade." Across neutral systems, panicked planetary governments began issuing spontaneous proclamations of friendship toward humanity. Unaligned factions scrambled to rebrand themselves as child-safe zones and offered Earth access to everything, from trade routes to thermal spas. And yet, Earth accepted none of it. They didn't respond. Not until day 27 of the galactic standstill, when a single transmission lit up the secure comms channels of every major empire at once. It was a live stream of a birthday party. Ellie Monroe, now 5, wore a tiara made of paper clips and was blowing out candles shaped like Craxian dreadnoughts. Her mother, Commander Julia Monroe, stood in the background holding a slice of cake, with the exact same calm expression she had worn during the declaration of war. The only audio? Laughter. Human laughter. The kind that made seasoned generals question their life choices. Following that utterly mundane yet cosmically horrifying moment, Earth's ships began moving, not to attack, but to assist. They fixed navigation relays on underfunded orbital platforms. They cleaned space debris from neglected transit lanes. They delivered hygiene packs to frontier planets, complete with instructions on how not to make first contact using saliva. No commentary. Just flawless, deeply unsettling efficiency. One species, the Vlexari, long known for dismissing humans as ground apes with delusions of relevance, found their entire planetary surveillance system replaced overnight by Earth's polite observation grid. It came with a note: "We're watching, but we baked cookies." Meanwhile, Galo's top strategic analyst, Prefect Norlo Vaughn, publicly resigned after declaring, "We do not face an enemy. We face a species that has transcended vengeance. They parent the stars." And it was true. Earth didn't retaliate. They didn't demand. They demonstrated. They offered a galactic lesson in restraint so overwhelming it redefined the term power projection. and behind every action was one simple, non-negotiable message. You touched our child. This is us being calm. The Galactic military academies updated their doctrine overnight. Psychological warfare was now taught using human case studies. The phrase, Monroe Protocol, entered diplomatic slang as a euphemism for enforced behavioral correction, and still, no official word came from Earth's government. Just a rising wave of silence-backed mercy, the kind you only realize is terrifying once you understand it was a choice. Because somewhere, buried under Earth's calm smiles and politely delivered aid packages, everyone could feel it. That if a single finger were raised again toward a human child, the galaxy would not get a second demonstration. The apology ceremony, when it finally happened, was not held in the grand halls of the Galo Senate, nor in the sacred biodomes of the Crax hegemony, but in a modest Earth kindergarten classroom repurposed for galactic broadcast, complete with crayon art on the TIU, walls, juice boxes on standby, and a conspicuously unamused goat named Pickles tied to a jungle gym in the background. The Galo delegation, 37 nervous ambassadors representing 300 species, arrived in peace robes, diplomatic sequins, and facial expressions that ranged from desperate humility to the quiet realization that they had collectively become the punchline to the most expensive cultural lesson in galactic history. Ellie Monroe, the child at the center of this cosmic meltdown, sat cross-legged on a nap mat, clutching a battered stuffed velociraptor and watching the ceremonial proceedings with the serene detachment of someone who still believed glue was a food group. Her mother, Commander Julia Monroe, stood beside her, arms crossed, face neutral, eyes sharp enough to slice starships. The room's tension was interrupted only by Pickles chewing aggressively on a copy of Galactic Law, Volume 7th. The lead Craxian delegate, now adorned with a sash that sparkled uncomfortably under Earth's fluorescent lighting, stepped forward and attempted a bow. It was difficult, given his jellyfish anatomy. On behalf of the Crax hegemony, he began, in a trembling voice filtered through 3 translation drones and an emotional dampener, we extend our deepest, most sacred apology for the inadvertent mucus transfer event that catalyzed this demonstration. Ellie blinked. You sneezed on me. The delegate wobbled. Yes, with reverence. It was gross, she replied. I had to wash my hair 3 times. Pickles bleated, as if punctuating the point. And then, as dictated by the terms of the Monroe Protocol, now enshrined in Galo's newly updated interstellar ethics doctrine, all 37 ambassadors, in full regalia, knelt and apologized to the child individually. Each had to repeat the phrase, I will not spit, secrete, exude, emit, or leak upon any human minor, nor misinterpret boundary-related behavior under threat of educational retaliation. The ceremony was broadcast to over 6 billion systems. It was subtitled in every known language, including one composed entirely of pheromones and another spoken only through interpretive eyebrow movement. For many species, it was the most watched event in galactic history. For humanity, it was Tuesday. After the apologies were delivered, Earth's official envoy, a deceptively soft-spoken diplomat named Talia Rourke, who had once resolved a border conflict using only a disappointed sigh and a spreadsheet, stepped forward with a small wrapped box. She handed it to the Craxian delegate. A gift, she said, with a smile so warm it made 3 representatives faint. Inside was a tissue box, custom printed, with Ellie's face on it. The caption read, Use these first. The message was clear. The war was over, but the lesson was permanent. As the ceremony concluded, Earth formally declined all offers of reparations, territory and trade dominance. They wanted none of it. What they did want was respect and boundaries. The galaxy, once dismissive, now recalibrated its entire diplomatic doctrine. Human psychological deterrence became the new standard. Every embassy was issued a handbook titled The Monroe Line, How Not to Trigger Interstellar Groundings. Children across galaxies began dressing up as Ellie for Interstellar Relations Day. "Ellie stared first" became a cautionary phrase. Statues were commissioned. One depicted her with a juice box, standing atop the shattered remains of outdated diplomatic protocol. Even Pickles got a fan club. But beneath the comedy, the plush toys, and the viral memes, a deeper current ran through every civilization that had watched the silent fury of Earth unfold. An understanding that power didn't always scream. Sometimes, it whispered, waited, and raised its children to be the line no one crossed. The galaxy would never forget the day they mistook Earth's kindness for weakness, its tolerance for ignorance, or its silence for compliance. Because in the end, the most terrifying thing wasn't that humanity declared war over a sneeze. It was that they didn't need to. They simply told the truth, showed the truth, and let the galaxy understand one cold, hard fact. Earth was not interested in conquest. Earth was interested in boundaries, and they would defend them with everything they had, even if that meant turning a crayon-wielding 5-year-old into the most feared diplomatic symbol in the stars.